Today's technical subject is business units in DDM. And business units can be used for a number of things or in a number of different ways. And they are basically used as a higher level access control. So hopefully everybody is familiar with if you are a member of a certain group and you're trying to change a piece of information that at a certain status, then the access controls decide what you can and can't do. Well, we have the ability to have business units so that you can assume a different role within each different business unit. And it's a subject that I always struggle to explain. So I've got a graphic that I'm going to share with everybody. Okay. So I'm just going to go back to my workshops. As we can see here, previous workshops, we looked at the category browser. We looked at access controls not as the owner. We looked at importing using CSV files, the bulk edit and the CAD rename. And today's topic is business units. What I've done is I've broken it down into a set of tasks or subjects that I want to cover. So a basic overview. In order to try and explain this, I've got a graphic to show you because it's not the easiest thing to explain. So, can everybody see my screen okay? Right. Okay, so business units within DDM, when we install DDM, there is a default business unit that's called default. So some people might have already renamed this to call it your company name. Now, I do know some of the people who are online with us today have already got many business units configured. But for those who don't, your business unit is probably called default. And we'll look in the admin tool in a while. But essentially, what you will be familiar with at the moment is we can have groups within DDM. So you see on the right-hand side here, we've got two groups, releasers and viewers. Now, because you can link groups to a business unit, and we've got two business units here. One is quality and one is engineering. So the user, highlighted in green, could be a viewer as a member of the quality business unit, but maybe a releaser as a member of the engineering business unit. Okay, so that is the basic structure. And hopefully as I go through with a demonstration, it will make more sense. Okay, so let me get rid of this and let's just set this as, okay. We're going to look at the administration settings for business units now. So I'm going to go into the admin tool. So now we are in DDM administration. There's business units are here. Now, by default, there will only be one business unit, and it will probably be called default. If I double click on this, you can rename this without damaging anything else, without any other implications. So I've renamed mine and called it CSI, which is our company name. Okay, now I'm just going to close that. As you see, I've created lots of other business units. And they're different use models of business units as well. So you can see here, I've got one called Black Ops and one called Defense for secure data. I've also got an example, which is a customer business unit. And then I've got some departmental-based business units as well. Okay, so they're different ways that you can use business units. Now, if I go into the CSI business unit, we've got the name of the business unit, an extended description if you want to add it. And we also have an option here that says retain business unit. And I've set for the default to be unchanged. The options here are on, off, or unchanged. And I will explain why we have this option as I give you a demonstration using some actual data. But the only thing to remember is retain business unit. There's another thing with business units is that they can have an impact on auto numbering, the engine for auto numbering, which probably I will show you now. if we go to our auto number administration, at the top here, there are two numbers. And these numbers, the default number of characters required before a search is made, and the minimum you can set it to. So if I demonstrate and show you how that works, if I was to create a new document, so I'm going to do this without actually having a physical document, but if I'm creating a new record here, and I wanted to enter a manual number, then you see this number 6 in here. This is my default based on my business unit. And the way that this works is if I type in numbers, it will search to see, does that number exist? So I've actually picked a bad example based on the number that I'm trying to create because it's a part number, not a document. So I shall do this again. If I choose manual number and I type in 6 digits, the system will run a query automatically when it reaches 6 to see, are there anything else in the database that meets with that criteria? And as I continue to type, it will reduce and filter down that query as I type in more digits. So it's very useful. So you've got your default number, and you can also allow the user as to what that minimum can be. Now, that is the default functionality for that. What we can do against a business unit is, let's say the defense side of the business has a different part numbering or document numbering logic. So, or a good example is if you're a business that has merged several businesses together, and therefore you've got historical numbers from different businesses. Some of them might be 5-digit numbers, some of them might be 12-digit numbers. It might be that you want to adjust the number of characters before the search happens. Because if you've got 12-digit numbers and you set that to 4, you're going to start searching on an awful lot of items in the database. So it gives you the ability to tune this relative to the business unit. Okay, and I will add at this point, if anybody has questions on these particular areas that we can't answer today, and if you want to have a quick session online to discuss it, we're more than happy to do that at a later date as well. So jot down any comments that you have, but hopefully we will answer the questions today. So I'm not going to carry on with the business unit step through here, because I'm going to add people to the business unit and the groups in a different way. But for this defense business unit, you could say, well, I want to add a user to this business unit. It will now only show me users that are not already in this business unit. So if I was to say, well, I want to add Peter Schweitzer to this business unit as a member of a particular department or with certain permissions. Okay, now I'm going to unpick this because I'm going to cancel, because this is not the way I want to do it. So this is how you basically just say create new business unit. Okay, and good examples are if you want it to be on a departmental level, and I'll show you why in a minute. Or maybe if you've got an area of the business that works on, let's say, defense or Ministry of Defense data that is not available to other users, and you need to hide that data. And another example, we've got a customer who are design consultants, and they have many customers that also compete with each other, and therefore their design engineers have non-disclosure agreements per customer. So they create a business unit per customer, and therefore the design engineer is only allowed in the business units for those customers that they have a non-disclosure agreement with, and therefore they can't see competitive information. So it can be used in many different ways. Okay, if in doubt, always ask us the question. We're more than happy to take these questions, whether it's today or at a later date. So I'm going to hop back to DDM here, because there are some default user settings as well. I'm going to leave the admin ones there, so we're going to hop around a little bit. Each user in the system if I go to Stuart McBurney, who I'm logged in as, my default business unit is engineering. Okay. If you don't have additional business units, this will probably be set as default unless you've changed the name of it. Okay. If you set somebody's default business unit, when they create new items, parts, assemblies, drawings, and documents, it will be set to that business unit, not the default or the top level business unit. Okay, so again, it's very difficult to specifically say what is right or wrong in terms of configuration. It really depends on why you want to use business units. Okay, but you have the ability to set a user's default business unit. Against a user, you can decide whether they are a member of any other business unit. So if I look at the Black Ops business unit, this user is not a member of any group within the business unit. If I go to the customer business unit, they are in the group for items that they can view and load only released and under review status data. So I've got some access control groups here, which are full access controls, view and load all states, view and load only released and under review, or view and load released only. So the way that I've structured my access controls makes it very easy for me to say, well, okay, they're allowed to see this. In the defense business unit, they have full access control. Okay, so for each different business unit, you can decide which group, i.e. which permissions that user has. Okay, I'm going to come out of here. So the examples I've got, the first example is based on a department example. And the way to describe this is, and I would, a word of caution, because when you explain this, you think, oh yeah, that would be brilliant. That would work really well. So if for every department you say, well, the department can see their own work in progress files, but any other department can only see the released data from that department. So you could do all of that, which kind of makes sense. So, not only can they not modify it, but they can't see it. It adds a level of administration complexity. Unless you have a specific security reason why you would want to hide that information from the other departmental members, you have to question whether it's worth the additional administrative overhead. In the case of defense information, it's a necessity because your industry dictates. So, consider it with caution. Now, I've done a saved search here against the workshops, searching for document 0.4. Now, Stuart McBurney in here as looking for information to do with quality assurance, because this business unit is the quality assurance business unit, as you can see here. Okay, we also have the attribute retain business unit on. I can't modify this data. If I go to my server machine and I log in as Hercule Poirot, who is a member of the quality assurance department, okay, if I run the same query as a member of the quality assurance department, what we now see is I can see all issues of that document, issue 1, 2, 3, and 4. Issue 1 and 2 have been superseded. Issue 3 is currently under review. And under review it is the latest released issue, but it's currently under review because we're creating a new version. And this is why Stuart can only see under review, and the watermark that I've configured against this quite clearly shows that this is under review. Ask the question before you use that information, whether it's for production or purchasing or any other use. At least we're highlighting the fact that it is under review. So if we go back to Hercule Poirot, what we have here is this latest issue 4 is work in progress. So if I choose to change this to released, the previous issue will go to superseded because we've released the latest issue. If we jump back to Stuart McBurney now and refresh our query, we now see issue 4 that is released, because our access control is, as a member of engineering, I can only see information from the quality department when it's under review or released. Okay, so I'm just going to run through that one more time. This time, if we open the properties of this, you will see that it's not that clear actually. There's a little tick button in the top corner here that is ticked on when I create my new issue. So I'm gonna edit this file. Okay, we're not going to make much of a change to it. We'll just say Joe. Save. Up issue. I'm going to go to issue 5 and the change, let's just give it a change number. And we're just going to say changed. Let's keep it nice and simple. And I say OK. So I've now created issue 5 of my document, and issue 4 has been flagged as under review. And therefore, we can only see issue 4, and the watermark has changed to tell me that it's under review. Let's hop back to Hercule Poirot. If I open the properties of this, it's a bit clearer now that this blue tick box is turned on, because in the admin settings for the quality assurance business unit, we've got retain business unit switched on. And the reason for this is we don't want information to drop into the open business unit accidentally when we create a new issue. So if we've decided, and let's pick the defense example because it's a more important one, if something has been identified as this mouse can only be seen by certain people in the business because it's to do with the Ministry of Defence or Department of Defence, then if you create a new issue of it, you don't want it to drop from the defence business unit into the default business unit accidentally. So retain business unit ensures that it stays in the defence business unit. So it's a bit of a safety net. It's fail safe essentially, which is why we put that option in there. Okay. So this is one example of using business units on a departmental level, but I will mention the caution again. Unless you have a specific reason for doing this, be cautious about giving yourself an additional administrative overhead. If you want help setting it up, clearly we're available. Right. I'm going to hop back here and I'm going to go back to my details here. So we've covered the first example, which was based on the quality assurance department. The next example is the defense example. So if I click on this search where I've said, show me information where the business unit is equal to defense. Okay. While I'm here, if I hop to the form-based search and clear, if I do the drop down on business units, it will only show me the business units that I am a member of. So you cannot change from one business unit to another unless you are in both business units. You know, you can't see. So I've taken the option here of saying, look at defense data, and I can see 4 files. I just set it up in a slightly different way here using the Boolean-based search. And what I'm seeing here now is 2 different items. I've got a document that is under review because we're working on a new issue. I've also got a part because we're working on a new issue. If I go to Hercule Poirot and I run the same query, Hercule Poirot cannot see anything in the defense business unit because he's not a member of it, or he's not a member of any group that is a member of the business unit. If I again go to the form-based search and I do the drop down on business unit, defense does not appear in here because he's not allowed to see that at all. Okay, so cannot see anything. Let's change Hercule Poirot's permissions so that he can see defense data. So let's go to the admin tool, and we're looking for the user Hercule Poirot, and we're interested in the defense business unit. Now, he's not a member of any group related to that business unit. What I want to do is say that Hercule Poirot in the defense business unit can see only released data. So this group, the access controls have been set for this group, only view and load released information. Okay, confirm. If I go back to Hercule Poirot, do we see anything? No, we don't see anything. Why do we not see anything? Because nothing has been released yet. If I take this part and I change the status, I don't have, Joe McBurney's the owner. Okay, let's change the rules slightly. Is we're going to edit Hercule Poirot again, and we're going to say that you can released and under review. Confirm. We go back. We refresh the query, and I now see those two items that are under review. Okay, so same mechanism, but two different use models. One's for defense, one's for departmental. But that's the way that the rules apply. You can have a different role in a different group within a different business unit. So let's hop back to here. Look at my workshop information here. Go to the actions. So they're the two in fact, this is, I put the all docs. Actually, it's all items was my search. Okay, so we've looked at that example as well. The final thing that so we've looked at the admin settings. So we've covered that. We've covered the user settings. And we've shown how you can have different search filters when assigning a new number relative to business unit. And the final thing to add that only is applicable to those people who have multiple file servers, so multiple locations, is that you can have file server replication by business unit. So if you're not aware, you could have a single DDM server and a single file server, but you could also have multiple DDM servers in different locations within the same country or around the world, and you can have multiple file servers. If I go into the admin tool under multi-site, under file server replication, you can add, so if I had multiple file servers, so let's say I've got a DDM server 2, then you can choose replication by business unit. So it might be that for this location, you want it to replicate, replicate the defense data. So it's a way of not pushing physical files across to other servers if they shouldn't be there or if it's not applicable. It might be that you've got cross-country boundaries for import-export rules and things. So business unit segregation by file server, multiple file server replication. Okay, I won't go through it. There's lots of options in here that you can have, all sorts of filters and things. I'm going to cancel that because I don't run multiple file servers on this machine. So to recap, I'm going to go back to my original image here, and hopefully it will make sense to everybody. So we've got our groups that our access controls are based on, and you can have a different role in different groups relative to business unit. And the example on the screen is using different departments, but it could be secure data, non-secure data, or it could be customer A and customer B. A user can be in any number of business units or any number of groups within business units, but an item in the database can only be in one business unit. So you see that this workshop folder, and it's not just the items, it's not just the parts, assemblies, drawings, and documents, but all of the folders and the folder actions also live in a business unit. So you see here that these folders are all in the standard business unit for CSI. If I was to change that and change this one to defense, Hercule Poirot would no longer see. Let me just go back to here. Is that correct? If I go to workshops, I can only see 4 folders now. So it's not limited to the files in the database or the items, it goes across everything in the database. So a folder action, a part assembly during your document can only be in one business unit, but a user can be in any number of groups related to those business units.